Morgan here for Onefinity, and today I'm cutting my very first project on the Revolution 4th axis rotary. And this isn't just my first time using the Revolution, this is my first time using any rotary, like, ever. So assuming all goes well, rest assured that if I can do it, you can absolutely do it. And it's actually a lot easier than you might think. First off, I gotta figure out what to cut. Knowing myself, I have a tendency to go overboard, even when I have no idea what I'm doing. Especially when I have no idea what I'm doing. So I resisted that urge and went with something simple. A tasteful bust. So I went to my buddy Dave's Maker Scan project on printables and found my full body STL. Now I wouldn't consider myself skilled by any means at editing STLs, but I did manage to separate just the head part and stick it on this little pedestal. And that's it. That's my model. I'll open up a new project in VCarve and set up the job according to my material dimensions. So in the job setup window, when you have rotary selected, instead of width, height, and thickness, you'll see length and diameter. This piece is 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and that'll serve as our diameter, and the length will be 7 inches. The zero position will be the cylinder surface, and the XY datum will be at the bottom left corner, and the orientation will be along the X-axis. Now that the job's set up, we can import the 3D model. When you import the model, you can rotate and scale it to fit within your material boundaries. And you'll notice that my 3D model looks a little funky. I designed it that way on purpose. Here's why. Because I pretty much maxed out my capacity, I had to seat the bit pretty deep into the collet so I would have clearance above the material. And that worked just fine until the second roughing pass, where the collet was just banging into the uncut material as it was plunging. So I went back to my model, and the dowel that I manually added to it, I tapered it down gradually to prevent the collet from bottoming out on the uncut edge of the material outside the model. And that worked out beautifully. Now that I have my model imported and centered to the material, let's start toolpathing. The first thing we'll do is the material setup by clicking on this button that says set, 3.5 inch diameter, that's good. XY datum, we'll set that to the bottom left corner. And we'll zero out the Z-axis on top of the surface of the material. Under model position and material, I selected gap outside model and set that to 0 because I want the widest part of my model to be the full width of the material. Under rapid Z gaps above material, I have both values set to 0.2 inches. That's how far above the material the bit will be moving around between cuts. So the rapid movements are going to be kind of close, but they'll clear. Lastly, under home/start position, I also have the Z gap above material set to 0.2 inches. Okay, now that we have the material set up, the first thing we're going to do is run a roughing toolpath. We'll do that with a 1/4 inch spiral Jenny bit, cutting a 1/4 inch depth per pass at 150 inches per minute. That's going to clear out most of the waste so that the bit we use for the finishing toolpath doesn't have to work so hard. Now, when you preview that, the way it looks might be slightly jarring. Instead of seeing it in 3D, the preview is going to unwrap the model along the center axis, making this particular model look like it's laying out some sort of, I don't know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre style skin mask. It's creepy. Just shut your eyes and wait for the preview to finish, then it'll show you what it looks like in 3D. There, that's better. Next, we're going to do a 3D finishing toolpath. For that, we'll use a Skinny Jenny 1/16 inch tapered ball nose bit. That's going to go and cut out all the detail that the roughing toolpath didn't get. That'll run at 20,000 RPMs, 150 inches per minute, and with a 5% step over. And again, the preview is going to look nightmarish. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we have our two toolpaths. Let's go ahead and save them both to a thumb drive. You're going to use the post processor called Onefinity Masso Wrap Y2A. That's if you're doing this on an Elite machine. If you're doing this on an original or Pro Series machine, you're going to save the G code using the post processor Onefinity Wrap Y2A. Same thing, just without the Masso in there. Once you have those toolpaths saved to a thumb drive, bring that son of a gun over to your machine and load the file. Before you start cutting, you're going to need to tell the machine where the rotary is and where your material is in relation to it. To do that, just take the banana plug out of the touch probe you already have and plug it into the touch probe on the rotary. And of course put the magnet on the collet. With a 1/4 inch spiral bit installed, probe for X and Y the same way you normally would. Right here at the top right corner of the touch probe built into the rotary, it'll touch off the Y side, then move over and touch off the X. Then just move it over top of the circle there and probe for Z. Now here's where I need to make a little public service announcement. Okay, I thought that by probing for Z and indicating the material diameter in the toolpathing software, it would know where the surface of my material is based on it knowing where the center axis is after probing. Turns out you still have to zero your Z-axis on the material. Otherwise, it assumes that the center axis is your material zero. and that ain't gonna go well. Trust me, I made this mistake the first time I tried to run it.
Whew, that was bad.
Don't make the same mistake I did. Now, I know what you're thinking, Morgan, how could you be so dumb? Well, it's just the way God made me, and I want to apologize for that. Anyway, after zeroing out the Z-axis on the material, using the old paper feeler gauge trick, we're ready to start cutting. Make sure the rotary is securely mounted to the machine and your material is securely mounted on the rotary, then run the roughing toolpath. Now you'll see that at times my bit runs through the corners of the material as the A-axis is rotating during movements. That's because the software assumes I'm working with a cylinder, not a square. So the machine doesn't know any better, bless its little heart. It's only going through those corners a few times and just for a split second, so I didn't really worry about it. Anyway, let's take a few moments to listen to this smooth, relaxing music while the machine does its thing. Okay, the roughing toolpath is complete, and we can see this thing starting to take shape. Now we can install a tapered ball nose bit, then run the finishing toolpath. I chose an offset strategy for the finishing toolpath because it starts at the center of the model and works outward. I like that option because once the model itself is done, I can save a little time by ending the operation early without having to smooth out the supports, which are just going to get cut off anyway. Once the finishing toolpath is complete, unmount your material and remove the interface hardware. Now, no matter what you carve, you're going to be left with some support material on both sides of the model that you'll have to cut off and smooth out. For simple items without much detail, this should be pretty easy. But for this model, the center support was sticking right out of my head, so I had to do a little bit of shaping to get it to look right. I used a few different files, but you could use a rotary tool, chisel, I don't know, whatever you would normally use to carve stuff. Get creative. Once I got that award-winning hair looking just right, I sanded it and finished it with a hard wax oil. And there you have it, first carve on the rotary. If using a rotary seems a little intimidating, hopefully this will give you the confidence to dive into it. Because if I can do it with the barely functioning brain I got, anyone can. And that's all I have for you today. I just got another rotary to use on my Pro Foreman with a BuildBox controller, so I'll share more about that once I get it up and running. Until then, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, do all that YouTube stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Y'all be good.